Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai.
Good morning, Adefemi.
Hey. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Well, we begin with the unfortunate news of a tourist plane crashing in Kenya's coastal region of Kwale on the way to the Masai Mara National Reserve in very heavy rain. All 11 people on board were killed. Now, the airline Mombasa Air Safari said there were 8 Hungarian and 2 German passengers on board, as well as the Kenyan pilot. Now, the plane did crash in a hilly forested area some 40 kilometers from Diani, which is a popular town on the Indian Ocean. But the cause of the crash at this point is not yet known and confirmed. It's not the first time, unfortunately, a crash has affected this airline. A Mombasa Air Safari plane did crash in the Masai Mara in 2012 with 4 people killed in that incident. Now, moving on to the Middle East now, it's been 2 weeks into this already fragile ceasefire, and Israel has launched a series of attacks in Gaza, killing at least 3 Palestinians. Now, Hamas has responded by saying it will delay handing over the body of a hostage. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had made an order to launch powerful strikes after an Israeli official said its forces were fired upon in southern Gaza, and after Hamas handed over body parts on Monday. Now, Netanyahu called the return of those body parts a clear violation of the ceasefire agreement, which requires Hamas to return the remaining hostages in Gaza as soon as possible. Those body parts belong to a body that would already handed over. So Israel said that is an example of Hamas delaying things. Meanwhile, the United States forces have killed 14 people in strikes on 4 alleged drug boats in the Eastern Pacific Ocean region. Now, Mexico's Navy says it's still searching for a lone survivor approximately 100 miles from the Pacific coastal city of Acapulco. It is the latest in a series of attacks on the boats the US says have been carrying drugs in both the Pacific and the Caribbean. Now, the strikes at the direction of President Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, mark an escalation in his campaign to stop narcotics from entering the United States. Now, the strikes have drawn condemnation in the region, and experts have questioned their legality. It is unclear if these actions could affect Donald Trump's Nobel Peace Prize ambition. We'll just have to find out. Before I come over to my colleagues for their comments, let's move on to our newspapers today. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. This Day does lead with a new report titled Nigeria Back on Stable Growth Path, but Peace Remains Inadequate. That's according to the report by Quartus Economics. Now, still on the front page of This Day, the paper does report that the United States has revoked the visa of Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka without giving any reason. Now, Soyinka himself did confirm receiving this letter from the United States consulate in Lagos, saying that he has no record of wrongdoing, and he described the move as puzzling, but he insisted that he holds no grudges. And in the picture headline there, you can see we have the chairman of the Rise Media Group and, of course, editor-in-chief of the state newspaper, Prince Nduka Obagbena himself. He is in Saudi Arabia for the ongoing summit, a Saudi Investment Summit in Riyadh. He's pictured alongside Aisha Rimi, who is the Executive Secretary and CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, as well as Adebayo Ogunlesi, who, as we all know, is the Chairman and Managing Director of Global Infrastructure Partners. Lovely picture there. Moving on to the New Telegraph this morning. If we take a look at the New Telegraph, we can see the news that members of the House of Representatives Committee on National Security say they have received bomb threats from terrorists targeting the National Assembly. Now, lawmakers discussed the threat during a briefing urging security agencies to tighten surveillance and boost protection around the complex. Now, still on the front page of the New Telegraph, we do have reports that Nigeria is tightening its screening process. Where is that story? You can see Minister Tugar at some point. Yes, is it here? It's somewhere on this front page. Essentially, you have Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, talking about how Nigerians, in order to get Nigerian citizenship, he's making sure that, he's screening vehemently to make sure that, these are people who are conducive to Nigeria's national security. and making sure that applicants with genuine intent and verifiable records are granted Nigerian citizenship. So if we move on to the Punch this morning, we can see that Hurricane Tinubu has swept through its front page. That's as a wave of defections continue through Nigeria's political space. Governors in Taraba, Plateau and Adamawa are said to be perhaps under increasing pressure amid talks of crossing over into the ruling APC. Now, on the front page of the Daily Independent this morning, according to Budget IT, as 2025 State of the States report, Anambra was ranked the most fiscally sustainable state, while Enugu was identified as one of only 2 states capable of covering operating expenses without federal allocation. So essentially, Enugu has the ability to survive independent of federal allocations. These findings were, of course, released in the report released late this month. To The Guardian this morning, it does report on Nigeria's indigenous contractors accusing the federal government of withholding over 760 billion naira in payments for completed 2024 capital projects. Now, essentially, all Indigenous Contractors Association says that despite a warrant being issued 2 months ago, no cash has been released, leaving many of its members bankrupt. Now, the group has threatened peaceful protests in Abuja if the government fails to pay by the end of this week. Now, if we move over now across the African continent, we can see 2 different newspapers. I'm going to step in the middle here so you can still see me. So we've got The Citizen and we've also got The Standard. Now, both of these papers are focusing on the elections happening in Tanzania. So The Citizen of Tanzania here and the Standard of Kenya, as I said, are focused on Election Day in Tanzania, which is happening today. Voters are heading to the polls. Now, the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party has been in power for 64 years, and it has been facing growing calls for change amid concerns over youth unemployment and economic inequality. Now, according to both papers, security has been tightened nationwide, with observers watching closely as the outcome could signal whether Tanzania is ready for a major political shift or another chapter of continuity. We can see President Samia Suluhu there. We'll see whether or not she'll survive again. Now, moving on, we are staying in our international realm. Let's move on to the Miami Herald this morning. It does show the devastation of what we have seen in Jamaica in terms of Hurricane Melissa. They're calling it, the headline is Monstrous Melissa. It slams Jamaica, reporting that this Category 5 Hurricane Melissa has made landfall, as we know, with sustained winds of up to 185 miles per hour. That is the strongest storm to hit the Atlantic this year. At least 14 people, unfortunately, have lost their lives. We've seen widespread flooding, power outages and infrastructure damage across Jamaica. And we now know that the storm is on its way out of Jamaica and heading towards Cuba. Now, in an editorial still in the Miami Herald, it does reflect on the storm's impact, describing it as deeply personal for South Florida's large Jamaican diaspora. Many families are anxiously watching from afar as the hurricane shatters their homeland, with Prime Minister Andrew Holness saying that every corner of the island is going to feel the impact. Now, relief groups and churches in South Florida are already mobilizing to support recovery efforts in Jamaica as it faces what could be one of the worst natural disasters in decades. So that is your World Brief. Those are your papers from all around the world. Love to hear your thoughts.
Okay. But first, Femi.
Yes.
Concerning those airstrikes, I think America is violating international laws. You are having unilateral airstrikes on sovereign land.
Yeah.
You are not verifying. You're not working with the authorities in those countries.
Yeah.
I think it's a sad one for America. And America is supposed to be the bastion of civility. But under this administration of Donald J. Trump, I think it's a sad one. The first strike they had, I think was somewhere in Venezuela. It turned out when the family came out that they were just fishermen. But they claimed they were carrying drugs. And this was a strike on another sovereign land.
Yeah.
Now they are going this way again, doing this. There's no peer review. There's no local synergy. I'm not saying America cannot fight its drug war, but you cannot go ahead and perpetrate aggression, because this is aggression on the sovereignty of another country under the guise of fighting a drug war. And I think these are part of the things that also should be added to the Nobel community for them to see. The same person that they're nominating for a Nobel Prize committing a clear act of aggression, just like Israel is doing. Israel has violated the ceasefire so many times. The only reason why Hamas cannot even respond is Hamas has been pummeled to a corner, and it's the Palestinian people that will suffer it. So, we have not gotten to a point where hypocrisy rules the world. The Israelis have now drawn a line, a yellow line. They've extended their border spaces into Gaza. America is not saying anything about that. They are saying the ceasefire is holding. What ceasefire is holding? This is hypocrisy. Israel still goes there in the middle of the night, throw bombs at Palestinians, kill them. And they say the ceasefire is holding because Hamas has been pummeled. So Israel has a free range, and it's a very, very sad one that is happening. Please, let everyone in the world call America and Israel to order.
See, thank you.
All right, very quickly, Kenya. Sad news coming in from Kenya. The tourists, and it's like you mentioned, all aboard aside from the pilots were European tourists. And I think especially for a country like Kenya that's opened its doors in recent times to facilitate travel in and out, especially in the area of tourism, this would be a huge blow to that sector. The tourism industry is a significant boost to the GDP of the economy. And aside from the, of course, unfortunate lives that are lost and the families affected, it's also, as a nation, the impact it would have on prospective visitors, bearing in mind that, like I mentioned, these were all foreigners on board. Condolences to them, and we hope that once the investigation is conducted, because no official statement has come out for the cause, yes, we can look at the weather conditions at the time of takeoff, at the time of flight, but until we get a concrete investigation report, we cannot conclude yet. However, like you said, Adefemi, it's not the first time, and so it also speaks to the aviation sector and some of the health safety necessary safety precautions to take and to ensure that nothing was missing when the flight took off. We look forward to getting that report. But like I mentioned, I hope it would not be a huge blow to the significant impact of the tourism sector on the economy. I say this because, recently Kenya opened its doors with visa-free opportunities for people to travel in. And one of such that is supposed to do is to welcome visitors. And so unfortunate news like this would not help. But I must say as well that it's not just Kenya. And thankfully, we've stopped getting the news from the United States. At some point, it seemed like every other day there was one issue with air travel or the other. Still, air travel remains the safest route because of the low number of accidents that happen. Now, back home in Nigeria, it's a curious case of the defections. But when it comes to the defections, when it's a Hurricane Tinubu, that's another new nickname for him, Jagaban, Hurricane for him, because of the mass defections that have happened or are said to be about to happen in some states across the country, but Plateau State in particular. Yesterday, he talked about, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, about Governor Mutfwang and saying he was under pressure by some parties. But within the state, there are people who are resisting very determinedly his defection to the APC. And it's not unrelated to the position or perhaps his relationship with the chairman of the APC currently, who's also from the state. In fact, they're saying that those who are supporting his defection are people that have no political relevance to the APC because they were not able to win their awards or their units for the APC in the last presidential election. But let's see what would happen. Would he come in or would he stay put in the PDP in the coming days? But what we know now from the report is that it's not too friendly for him in the state as to whether or not he'll be moving to a question over to the APC.
Sorry.
Okay, let me start with Donald Trump, who has been Trump. Now, Rufai was talking about how Trump is violating international law. It's as follows. There's a particular legal document called the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, adopted 1982. It's called UNCLOS, which defines the territories, territorial waters, coastal waters, EEZ, and all of that. Now, one of the categories under UNCLOS is what is called high seas. High seas, another word for it is international waters. Now, what Trump is doing, and which he has been accused of by Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexican president, is that, look, he's violating international law because high seas or international waters fall under what under UNCLOS is defined as the common heritage of mankind. That's what it says under the law of the sea. And no country has jurisdiction, exclusive jurisdiction under high seas, which is the common heritage of mankind. 12 nautical miles from the coastline. That's what they say in law of the sea. Now that is where Trump is operating. He has done it in the Caribbean. He has done it in the coastline, South of America. Now he's gone to the Eastern Pacific. Even Congress is challenging him, Democrats and Republicans, that he's violating international law. But he says no, he has sovereignty everywhere. Now, how do you have a man who says he has sovereignty over the common heritage of mankind? That's number one. Number two is that he has been accused, in this case by Gustavo Petro. Gustavo Petro, that's Colombia, right?
Colombia,
the president of Colombia. That the U.S. cannot engage in summary execution of people. There's something called due process in international law. If people are carrying drugs and you have found that they are carrying drugs, it's not for you to eliminate them under international law. There should be due process. But that's not what Trump is doing. He has sent aircraft onto the high seas. He has sent troops to the high seas. He has deployed the biggest warship in the world. That's U.S. General Arford, Warship General Arford is already in that area. Now, he may say he wants to defend the interest of the United States to prevent narcotics coming to the United States. But Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, reacting to this matter, says that what the U.S. is trying to do is to provoke war by threatening the sovereignty of other countries. But of course, what do you expect Peter Hegseth to say? He says they acted under the direction of Donald Trump, as if Donald Trump is the ruler of international waters. I think that the international community should look at this reign of impunity and the violation of international law. Now, as for Israel and Hamas, there is counter-accusation in terms of the ceasefire. Now, some progress has been made. Hamas has released hostages. Israel has also released about 1,278 Palestinian prisoners. But the issue here is about the dead hostages. Accusations on both sides about fake recovery on the part of Hamas, and then that there was an attack on Israeli soldiers east of the Yellow Line, which is the Israeli-controlled territory in Gaza. And Hamas says no, they were not part of it, they were not involved in it. But J.D. Vance says, well, this is to be expected, but that the ceasefire is still in place. I think, that the international community should just continue to put pressure to ensure that the ceasefire does not end. About 14 people have been killed in attacks by Israel. Trump says, well, Israel can retaliate, but that the ceasefire must stand. What the world is interested in is peace in that region. Absolutely. And as much progress as can be made through persuasion, through diplomacy, should be encouraged, in my view.
Thank you, Dr. Rubin.
Peace, world peace, and
Yes,
especially
that's what we want.
In the Middle East. Thank you so much, Adefemi, for taking us through the world brief this morning, and of course reviewing top stories in today's headlines across the world.